So without further ado, I have great pleasure in introducing Kurt Pritz, Olof Nordling from ICANN for our keynote presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. So ironically, just the other day at work, we were talking about going to hell in a handcart, and we're wondering where did that expression come from? Except we were talking about going to hell in a handbasket, and as it turns out, the best theory is that in the days of the guillotine in the French Revolution, the heads were caught in a handbasket, and they were carted off to hell in a handbasket. So that's where that comes from. So that's what we talked about at work. Only in a good way. So if, shoot, see, I don't think I'd be good at this. Okay, so actually the title of the presentation is a good preamble. It sort of captures this in a microcosm. And I'll start by saying Olaf's name and my name were both presented to us as holding a keynote address, and we talked about how we were going to do this. So we're trying a couple things. One is this is a conversation sort of back and forth between us. So I hope that works out for you as far as conveying information. And then two, it being a keynote sort of speech. Really when I give talks, I don't usually have slides, but being from ICANN, there's this huge urge for anyone in any presentation to have a deck of slides, because it seems like that's all we do all the time is make decks of slides. I never thought at my stage of the game in my career I'd still be making slides, but that's what I do for a living. So we have some slides, but we've taken a kind of different approach to slides also. And I don't know if it'll work or not, but I hope it works for you. I started by saying that, that title, ICANN and new gTLDs, is a microcosm of this whole discussion, because there's really not a word in there except for new, and new has to modify something. And what's in there is acronyms. And we've all gotten used to talking in acronyms and not explaining things in English. And so we're going to try to be careful of that, but we can't help ourselves. ICANN is the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. So this presentation is about names in the form of acronyms and how they've been built into the new gTLD program, and also numbers. We're going to try to tell the story of this in numbers, and kind of give you some background and lay a groundwork for the speakers that are going to come later that are really going to go into the details of the process. So we have one real slide to start, and then talk more about numbers and names.
Right, so, all right. Well, great to be here. And thankfully, you didn't have any sort of black ice conditions when I came here, which I had in Brussels this morning. So getting ready was a bit of a challenge getting here today, but for you, regardless of whether you think about applying for a new gTLD or not, there are quite a few things that you need to know. And timing is one. We're in the middle of the application process right now. We'll get back to that. And of course, trademark protection issues. There are two aspects, both protecting the trademarks, which we have paid a lot of attention to and grafted new processes and provisions into the applicant guidebook for protecting the trademarks in the application phase on the top level, but also, and with just as much attention to what will happen on the second level once the TLDs are launched. Those are quite important for any company, I would say, to have a close look at. And then, of course, if you're an applicant or potential applicant, the costs. The $185K US in application costs, which is, well, that's clear. What may happen during the process is that you're exposed to objections, have to deal with those. That costs something. Or you end up in community priority evaluation or perhaps an auction to resolve contention. That adds to cost as well. But of course, the main important cost, which nobody should forget, and that's where these are the tip of the iceberg, is the actual operations in the future. So that's quite important. And of course, taking stock of your risks and opportunities. Because, well, the landscape will change in the internet with the launch of new gTLDs. It won't be overnight, it's not a big bang, but it will be a trickle, and it will call for awareness, of course, and attention from across the company, because it's not only the IP lawyers or the marketing people or the purchase people, it's really across the company. And also, well, a good doses of imagination to think about what can this imply. And finally, a sprinkle of endurance, because this is not, as I mentioned, happening overnight, and it won't happen overnight. It hasn't happened overnight so far, as we all know.
Is that your segue?
That's you're it.
So Emily mentioned how long have you been at this, and she suggested 6 years, and I really suggest double that. ICANN was formed in 1998, and the genesis of its formation was a few papers that were written. People got around a table and decided that internet governance shouldn't belong to the US government, it should belong to some multinational corporation. And so in 1998, ICANN was formed, and in the founding papers, they identify the big role for ICANN to increase competition and choice, and specifically with figuring out this problem, how to launch new top-level domains. That formation group was specifically asked to sort this out as part of this process, and they put a line in there, you know, this is for the new corporation to figure out. So you guys go do it. So what did we do? The first, I can't believe how hokey this is. I can't believe. What did we do for the first 6 years? You know, Emily talked about the last 6 years, but there have been new gTLDs before.
You skipped the, well, you saw it was new math. I mean, 2011 minus 1998 equals 12. That's due to the Heisenberg uncertainty relationship. You can't really be sure that it's 13, so it's probably 12. Okay, two new numbers, 7 and 45. And 7 would be, well, once upon a time there were 7 gTLDs before ICANN existed. Then there's been a trickle of them in 2 proof of concept rounds in 2000 and 2004, where we had additions like .biz, .info, later on 2004, the .cat and .mobi, and as of more recently, and we haven't mentioned CCTLDs. The difference between gTLDs and CCTLDs is that CCTLDs have always been 2 letters, like .uk, and while the gTLDs have always been 3 or more letters. CCTLDs, they needed to urgently have extensions into other languages and scripts. So there's been a fast-track process going on since 2009, where a number of additions have been made, some 20 new languages, 30 new CCTLDs, but they're adding by the day, little by little. So you will see, and have already seen, well, non-Latin letters to the right of the dot, or actually to the left of the dot in the case it's right to left scripts, which there are a few. So 45, that's about how many there would be added by ICANN, in addition to already the existing ones and the CCTLDs.
I think one thing we want to mention is that what's important about those rounds is the lessons learned, and those were applied to this bigger round of new TLDs. So in 2000, it was preordained that there would be 7 TLDs, and there were 55 applications for about 200 or so top-level domains, and that put the ICANN board in the position of picking and choosing winners and losers, and we don't think ICANN should be in that position. And if you can imagine the atmosphere, the board actually sat on the stage, heard presentations by the applicants, and then picked the winners in that meeting. So that had to be kind of exciting. So limiting by number wasn't a good idea. And then in 2003, it was limited by type of TLDs. We had a round for sponsored or kind of community TLDs. And applicants tried to shoehorn their definition of their TLD into that sponsored definition, and that didn't really work either. So there are a number of other lessons learned from this, how to create an objective process and how to create rules and stick with them.
And that's where the policy development process started, based on those experiences. GNSO took a lead in developing the policy that was adopted finally in 2007 by the ICANN board. And then we went into the implementation of all this, because they were pretty high level. So ICANN staff started to produce a number of applicant guidebooks, and they count nowadays up to 8. There have been 8 iterations of the applicant guidebook, starting with a fairly meager one, which was then expanded upon, and so on and so forth. And why is that? Well, let's see if this works as well. Yeah, it does. Because I think we have never had so many comments received. Because what we do for every proposal that comes from ICANN, it's put out for public comment. And we do receive comments, sometimes just a few, sometimes a lot. In this case, all in all, we received 2,000 comments. And we produced 1,400 analysis pieces. Some comments were addressing the same theme, of course. We launched 59 separate studies for particular things that couldn't be changed immediately, and we had to explore it further, and 5 of which were of an economic analysis nature. And we thought we had 47 total comment period, but we just launched another one. So now we're up until 48 and
I think
counting.
One of the features and bugs of the ICANN model is that we continue to have conversation until we think issues are settled, or conversation or new issues being raised has died down. So it's not like a regulatory model where a set of rules is put up for public comment. There's a 60-day public comment period. There's a hearing. The rules are revised and posted and enforced. So while this did take 6 years or 12 years or 13 years, however you do your math, which is a long time, you can feel satisfied that any entity coming to the ICANN model can be fully heard. So, I think it's more of a feature than a bug, and it really speaks to the benefit of this multi-stakeholder model for how we run the internet. It's kind of cool. So why do we have this 48th comment period that ICANN just launched about trademark protections? Well, I've been asked to speak a little bit about recent controversy. I and Rod Beckstrom, the CEO, and Steve Crocker, the chairman of the board, have gotten several letters from some of our United States congresspeople, senators, and House of Representative members, and the FTC, asking for being urged by trademark owners for new types of protections, or a delay to the program, or a limited launch. And so many of you might have seen these letters and wondered what was going to happen with the new gTLD program. Well, I'll say that, and a lot of that number 4, that's how many times we've testified in front of congressional committees and subcommittees about new gTLDs. We've been called there 4 times. So I lost my train of thought, but what I was going to say was that, first, this flurry of activity at the end, I think, has always been expected, that many parties approaching new gTLDs are approaching it in a few ways, right? One is to increase protections for their interests, whatever they are. 2 is to delay, so there's more time to create a strategy, right? And three is to get prepared. So that there would be an effort for a last-minute delay in the program and a lot in the news was not unexpected. I think the important part is that the U.S. Department of Commerce, that provides a degree of oversight to ICANN in the United States, responded and said, from all these comments, there's a perception that more protections are needed at the top level, that they're not that many companies were afraid they'd have to register defensively, pay $185,000 just to protect their brand. So can you work to diffuse that perception? And so one thing we did is ICANN did an ICANN-esque thing. It launched a public comment period, both to help in education about the available protections for trademark owners now, and two is, again, to see what people thought about additional protection. So at the urging of our United States government partners, we have partnerships with many governments, we launched this additional comment period. So that was sort of the result of the last-minute flurry that you saw in the newspapers and in different governments about new gTLDs, which made it all pretty exciting. And so at the end of the day of all that and all that comment period, what's the end? Well, Olof talked about the meager first guidebook, which I don't think was meager.
95 pages it was.
Yeah.
Well, compared to that one over there.
But it was eloquent. Depends if you wrote it or not. So the guidebook, this slide's a little bit misleading. The first guidebook was about 40,000 words long. And this guidebook is 80,000 words, and 20,000 of them are the original words. And most of those are small ones. So really it demonstrates, again, I think, the efficacy of the ICANN model. And that is to react to public comment. We had 48 public comment periods and did all those studies and wrote 1,400 pages of analysis. But at the end, that resulted in real change to the new gTLD process. So all the new trademark protections that are there are all a result of public comment and interaction and the like. So having all that comment, how did we get to this amount of change?
Yeah, and well, I mentioned the comments per se, and some of them was very easy to take on board because it's just, okay, this is great, this is clear, that can't be anything that much better than what we have. In other cases, there were studies launched, and in yet again, other cases, this really called for consultations in depth among those, the stakeholders. So more than a dozen working groups and teams were launched with wide participation from the constituencies and the community at large in order to resolve particular problems. And this had a consequence which we'll come to, but it must be said that this is really how ICANN was conceived to work, to have these go forward in iterations and really, all right, we start out with a proposal and we change it with the input and with the assistance of the community and in the widest sense of the word, in order to get to something that's really well, workable and acceptable and as close to a consensus situation we can achieve. So this is what we would call a hallmark of ICANN, that this iteration, not prescribing things, trying out and meandering through all these years, all these various versions of the guidebook, and all these changes iteratively until we reach the final product, which then the board finds that this is something that we can launch and feel confident about. So
these 12 working groups that were formed, what to attack very specific problems, what conclusions did they come to? Well, one is they created about this many new acronyms in ICANN. ICANN's very acronistic. And we created...
It doesn't infringe on the trademark of some cooperative,
That's right.
the eternal thing.
Yeah, one of those upstairs. Well, that's a smaller number. So these are the names of all the working groups, not all of them, but many of the working groups that were formed. The IRT and the SDI investigated trademark issues. The IDN, WG, and the JIG investigated IDN issues. The ZFA and the HSTLD investigated security issues. The IAG is implementing the Trademark Clearinghouse. The JAS is the Applicant Support Working Group, and there's the very esoterically named Recommendation 6 Working Group. And I don't know how they came up with it, but there it is. And what did they do? These are some of the new protections and tools in the applicant guidebook. So there's the Trademark Clearinghouse. URS is a rapid takedown process for misperforming or malfeasance. DRSP is dispute resolution policies. URS is there twice. eBureau is an emergency back-end provider in case a registry fails, another registry takes its place to protect registrants. The IO is the independent objector. The PDDRP and the RDRP exceed commonly accepted lengths for ICANN acronyms, but are dispute resolution processes.
I think my favorite is PDDRP. It's got a ring to it. Post-delegation dispute resolution procedure. Yeah, PDDRP.
So Olof, in the last 5 minutes of our talk.
All right. Okay. So the current applicant guidebook has actually shrunk from 352 pages to 349. So we managed to rationalize some things. And just a little message. The most important module in it, there are 6 modules. That's number 2. And in particular, the annex to number 2, which has all the detailed questions. So if you're considering applying for a new gTLD, well, there's still time to do it. But read them carefully, really, really carefully. And if you find that, yes, I'm good with all this, I can write it down straight ahead, yeah, well, go ahead and do it if you like. Otherwise, if you want to apply, get some assistance. That's, I think, one advice. There are 50 questions, but there are many sub-questions in those. So they need careful attention in order to get through the application process. So how will the applications be dealt with? Well, at least Kurt and I, we're pretty happy that we will not deal with them. The evaluations will be done by specialist companies that have been picked in competitive bidding. So we have University College of London, The Economist, Ernst & Young, KPMG, WIPO, ICC, ICDR, and JAS. It's not the Joint Applicant Support Working Group. It is a company which have been selected to deal with the application evaluations and the objection dispute resolution proceedings. And we can go into detail with that if you like, but let's advance.
Yeah, so I just want to say we're pretty pleased with the partners that with whom we've chosen to work, and that we're excited to work with us.
2 very important numbers, 29, meaning 29th of March, which is the very last day that you can register as an applicant, and the 12th of April, which is the closing day at 23:59 UTC for any information to be put into the application system, the TOS. And then we go to some other numbers, which are Kurt's numbers.
That's a fast number. So how long will it take to process applications? Here's how you're going to hear more about this in detail later, but here's some background. Working with root server operators and ICANN's technical advisory committees, it was decided that new TLDs should be delegated into the root zone in some measured way in order to make sure that the root zone, that the whole internet continues to operate reliably and the performance isn't denigrated. So it was decided that no more than 1,000 applications per year, 1,000 gTLDs per year would be delegated. So how is that metered? ICANN's going to evaluate applications in batches of 500. So if there's more than 500 applications, receive substantially more, so it makes sense to make a new batch. They'll be evaluated in batches of 500. So how long will that take? Well, the initial evaluation period, the period for evaluating TLDs is expected to be 5 months long. So think about after a startup period, you know, these evaluations will start in June. Then every 5 months after that, we can take up a new batch of 500. So you'll probably see some math in a later presentation, but there'll be a batch of 500 depending on how many are received every month. How long from when the application window closes until we see the first TLDs delegated? Probably about 9 months for the whole process. You'll see more later, there's a 2-month process for some objections by governments, a 5-month evaluation period, and then a couple months at the end for executing an agreement and getting delegated in the root zone.
And that's if everything goes to plan, there are no hiccups under the way, coming up into a contention situation and having to resolve the contention, because then, of course, the slowest decide before the contention can be resolved. So instead of a normal human pregnancy of 9 months, it could be an elephant pregnancy of 18. I mean, in such cases, that may happen.
And then how long to the second round? I don't know. ICANN said publicly, and the board has said very recently publicly, we want to conduct the second round of new TLDs as soon as possible or as soon as practicable. Lately, there's been a lot of urging to announce a date for the second round, and this sort of urging is very rational. Many firms and many entities will participate in the first round, but many will choose to stand back, see what happens in the first round, get an understanding of the new market and the uses to which it can be put, and apply in the second round. So ICANN's been asked several times, when is the second round going to be? The reason why this is not a number is because as part of the process and negotiation for launching the first round, there was an agreement made that trademark protections would be assessed after the first round before we launch the second round, that we make sure that root zone operation isn't denigrated before we launch the second round. How long will these studies take? Sort of depends. The first TLDs will be delegated in early 2013. How long do they have to be in operation before we can assess trademark protections? Or, you know, you can tell a lot just by looking at the list of applicants. So in May sometime, when we look at the list of applicants, that will open up our eyes as to, you know, what kind of trademark protections we might need. And I think the discussion in the internet community will probably drive the launch of the second round forward, but it'll be kind of up to that. So there's sort of a window when the second round can be, but you know, ICANN at least is on record as saying it should be as soon as possible. I've always, I wasn't clever enough to master this. So just in closing, new gTLDs are meant to benefit applicants, but not solely and not even primarily. New gTLD applicants are intended to benefit the billions of internet users there are. There's about 2 billion internet new users now, and they're particularly intended to benefit the next billion internet users, and those users aren't in Europe, and those users aren't in North America. They're going to come from other places, and so it's expected that new TLDs will bring innovative uses and access to markets and new types of competition that will cumulatively result from each individual's participation in this round. And so we expect at the end of the day that this new marketplace will provide benefit not primarily to the applicants, but really to the 2 billion internet users today and a billion more that are coming in the next few years. So unless you have anything else to say, I'd like to thank you very much for your attentiveness and politeness to us. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, both of you.